Hi, I'm Jake Ray, and today on the Student Slant, you'll be hearing from Summer Cartwright in her interview with Sam Sanders of NPR. We have Summer here to tell you a little bit about it.
Sam Sanders is the host of one of NPR's most popular talk shows, It's Been a Minute. He kind of rose to podcast fame as part of NPR's Politics podcast. He covered the Bernie Sanders campaign and then moved on to the Trump campaign during election season in 2016. Sanders' show now focuses on finding the good in the news by having a diverse panel of guests and kind of bringing a tone that is more happy, friendly, and, talkative, what you would do with your pals, talking about what's going on in the news. One of Sanders' most popular segments is when he takes calls from listeners across the country and across the globe. These listeners will tell him and his guests and everyone listening to the podcast about the best thing that happened to them this week. I found that really, really inspiring, and it's a great way to end the week by hearing about all these good things like babies being delivered, people getting married, and people graduating college. So I wanted to talk to Sam about finding happiness in the news and the importance of good news regardless of political party lines. Okay, so I listened a little bit to all sides, and you're kind of talking about a few of the things that you do in your episode, which one of them I really, really enjoy on Fridays, where everyone talks about the best thing that happened to them all week. How did you develop that, and why did you want it to, stay put and continue doing that?
Yeah, so for years on my Facebook page, I would post to friends, what's the best thing that happened to you all week? Feel free to brag. And folks would just write stuff. And it was a thing that I did on Facebook. I can't take credit for it because I saw some other friends do it first. But when we were having brainstorming sessions for the show and asking friends and colleagues what should go into the show, a friend of mine said, well, why don't you do that best thing all week thing, but like on the radio? And I was like, I never thought about that. And then we tried it, and it was, from the start, it just clicked. So I can take no credit for it. The idea is not my own. The idea to put on the radio is not my own. I just like to do it. I think it's really a testament to the community of our audience and the vulnerability that they show in that segment and the freedom that they have in really telling us in detail about their lives. And I think that is a reminder in such crazy news cycles. Like, we forget that regardless of what's happening in Washington, D.C., we're all still people just living lives, and it's okay to celebrate milestones in your life. Like, your life doesn't stop because the administration changed. Your life doesn't stop because of what he or she tweeted. Your life is still living, right? And I think that part of the show gets to that.
And why do you think people are so... why is it so easy for someone to share their news with a community that they don't know? They don't know the other listeners. They don't really know you, even though they might feel like they do. And they're just so willing to put such personal things out into the air. I mean, somebody proposed the other week.
Yeah, she said yes. She said yes,
That's
thankfully. Because none of this stuff is really foreign to anyone. All of the things that we go through, we kind of all go through. Love and marriage and life milestones like jobs or graduations or dealing with ailing loved ones. Those are things that we all experience and know about. So while these things are personal that people are telling us, they're not secrets and they're not new because we're going through the same stuff, right? And of course I would want to tell even strangers about an experience I've had with love or loss, because we all experience love or loss. It's not something foreign. We all go through it.
And especially now when things are so partisan, or at least people hear that things are so partisan, that kind of brings people together regardless of their affiliation. They don't talk about, I'm a Democrat, but this is the best thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
So I feel like that kind of brings people together in a way that no other thing really can.
Oh yeah, and it's good to be able to have a space where you can step away from your political tribe for a bit. I think that on the left and the right, in the run-up to this past election and in the aftermath, we have seen an abundance of political sanctimony. The left thinks they're all right all the time, and the right is totally wrong. The right thinks the left is all wrong all the time, and only they get it right. And that's not the way the world works. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. And it's important to remind ourselves that we all contain multitudes. And stripping things back to some of the universal that people share in those best things segments, I think that helps to do that.
Mm-hmm. How can people consume the news and still be happy?
Put your phone down. Put your phone down. I fall into that trap of just being on Twitter all day. Mm-hmm. It's not the real world. It's not the real world. Nowadays, I have nights off from Twitter. I'll delete the app from my phone.
What nights are those?
It depends, whenever I feel like I need it. But a lot of times I'll have a Twitter-free weekend where, like, the phone is just put to the side, the app is off the phone, and I'm not doing it. Because if you constantly live in a constantly refreshing state of social media, everything's a fire, everything's a crisis, and everything is burning all the time. And that's not actually true. It's not true. It's like, whether or not you read the tweet, you're still living a life, right? Mm-hmm. And some days it's okay to step away from the tweet and try to see the forest and not just every single tree.
Right, and especially with my age group too, since we grew up with that, and Twitter is so important right now. Instagram is too. Like, I can't think of an hour today where I wasn't on both of them.
Oh, yeah. You just got to slow that down. One of the things that I started doing with the new show is I devote a good half an hour or more every weekday morning to reading a physical newspaper. Mm-hmm. And it's a thing that I never thought I would do because I'm a millennial and we don't do that. Mm-hmm. But it is a perfect way to, like, not have your head in a phone and just focus on, like, reading the news. And the funny thing that I noticed is when I read stuff on my phone or a link through Twitter or Facebook, I never finish the article. When I have a physical newspaper in front of me, I finish the story. Mm-hmm. I finish it, and that is good. And so these phones can be the devil. And I say this as someone who lives on Twitter, and Twitter's a big part of my work and my career, but put it down sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you have any techniques to find good news out of all of the bad news, if that makes sense, like searching for a specific site that makes you happy or specific news articles that usually make you happy?
You know what's really interesting, and it's like my secret. One of the best aggregators of, like, all the stuff is this site called Newser.com. And it's been around for years, and all they do is aggregate. All they do is write smaller stories of other people's stories. Mm-hmm. But they write about everything. And so half of the stories are total crap and awful and nasty. Mm-hmm. But they find those really fun and interesting slices of life sometimes. Huh. And if I'm having a bad day and I scroll through Newser long enough, I will find a feel good. Mm-hmm. And our listeners send us a bunch of stuff all the time. Yeah. Our inbox is full every day with folks sharing stuff, and it always cheers us in the office.
What about outside of news? What makes you happy every day, and that you know that you can go to it on your worst days, and you know that you'll find joy?
I run a lot. I try to get in 5 miles a day before work.
What time do you go to work?
It depends. I'm usually in DC. I was in the office by 9:30 or so, and I'd get up at around 6 or 6:30, make the coffee, read the paper, go for the run, listen to the podcast, and then show up to work. And my day would be set, and I would feel like I was in the zone by the time I got there. I just moved back to LA, so my schedule will change a bit. I'll have to be in the office earlier, but I need that time in the morning just to kind of like have some me time. So I usually run, and then after that I try to meditate for about 10 or 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. In what way?
When I meditate? Mm-hmm.
Do you listen to anything? Or?
I started out using an app, and then once I got the hang of it, I was tired of hearing the dude's voice, and I just do it myself. So I can kind of self-guide myself through it, and I can definitely tell days when I don't do it. I can tell. I have a worse day. And I mean, I'm a church kid through and through. I was raised Pentecostal and Apostolic. So usually the meditation sessions end up being like half prayer, half meditation. And it's good and nice and centering for me. Yeah.
And back to the news thing, just one more.
Yeah, you're good.
Is now more important than ever? You hear it all the time. Now is more important than ever to read the news, to pick up your local newspaper, to read the New York Times because of who's in office. Do you think that's a true claim?
People should have been reading the news when Obama was president. I think it is really easy to compare one to the other and say that one is definitively worse, and it's not my job to tell listeners what they should think about that. But I will say a lot of stuff was undercovered when Obama was president because he was really good at putting people at ease. Yeah. And I lived in D.C., and there were weeks that I just forgot he was around. because he just did the work. But there were things that were definitively undercovered. The fact that the war on terror became mechanized and robotized during his term, and we had drones killing people across the Middle East. Had George Bush done that, people would have been up in arms, right? But Obama had this calm, cool way of doing stuff that was like actually worthy of more coverage.
Yeah.
I think in the same way about immigration. Barack Obama was known in certain parts of the country as the deporter-in-chief, right? It was undercovered. Even the way that he dictated access to the press. Donald Trump has developed a big reputation for denying press access. Obama did too, just
With
in a nicer way.
Especially.
Public records, access of photographers. He just smiled when he did it, you know? And so I think that it is particularly refreshing to see people be more civically engaged in the age of Donald Trump, but we should have been civically engaged already.
How can we continue being that engaged after Trump?
I think the real way that things spread is when people tell their friends and their family about it.
Okay.
During the run-up to the election in 2016, we had an episode before or around Thanksgiving, and I said to our listeners of the Politics Podcast, I said, everyone should go home, and at the Thanksgiving dinner table, you should talk to your family about politics, even the ones you don't like, even the ones who are on the other side of the spectrum. And I got hate mail about it. Like, how dare you ask me to talk to my Uncle Joe Bob? And it's like, well, if you think he's wrong, who else is going to reach him? Not me. He's not playing my podcast. I think that there is this mood in the country where people who are angry are waiting for someone else to fix stuff. You fix it. You know, like all of us have agency. And if you think something is wrong, start small where you are and do what you can. I really bristle when I see people expect the media to fix what's wrong in our politics. Yeah, we do some stuff wrong, but we're just the media. We are only one part of a fully civically engaged society. And if you see some stuff happening that you don't like, you get in there too. But there is a certain, well, you should do it-ness that I see happening right now that I find disgusting. Not just because I'm in the press and people are always telling us to do it, but I just think it doesn't serve us well. Everyone can be civically engaged. And my job is not to tell people how to be engaged, but to say, you can be. And we want to preach that message to conservatives and liberals and libertarians and whoever. Like, you get to be civically engaged. And I think the wackiness of the last election was a reminder of that. But yeah, you can always be civically engaged.
Do you think that kind of you do something nature especially started, just to make sure, with this presidency or with that election? Is that when you started?
I think there are ebbs and flows. I mean, I lived through the anti-war protest era before the run-up to Iraq. I saw the groundswell of support that Barack Obama got from folks that weren't expected to vote. So it's all cyclical. There is nothing new under the sun. And we think that the era we live in now is particularly different and distinct and removed from all previous history. It's not. It's not, right? And all of the issues that America seems to be grappling over, they have been issues that we've dealt with forever. Immigration and race and gender. Those aren't new things, you know? Maybe the medium is different with Twitter and the tone feels different because there's such a distinct difference in the way that Donald Trump talks to America compared to Barack Obama. But these issues aren't new.
Right.
Border wall's not new.
Yeah.
People forget, like, there's already a wall, there's already a fence, and Democrats before voted for it. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton previously voted for fencing along the border.
Which is just almost different terminology, essentially.
Yeah. So I try to remind our listeners, like, be mad, be happy, be whatever, but don't be too surprised. This stuff is not new. I mean, Donald Trump feels distinctly different, but you think about that tax bill that he just passed. That is cut out of the GOP Bible. That is a tax bill that Republicans have wanted for decades. He passed it. It's not a Trump tax bill, it's a GOP tax bill, and they've been wanting that for a long time. So we should not act as if all of this has never happened before or hasn't been in the works for a long time.
And to end it on a positive note, what's something good that you think the news is doing? that you think this technology, this Twitter, this social media, whatever?
I think the best thing to come out of this election is for journalists to really step back and say, maybe we should not be in the business of predicting the winners of elections. When did it become our job to say who's going to win? Mm-hmm. And no shade on 538. I know folks that work there and they're great, but like predicting elections is not journalism. It's two different things. And the aftermath of the election has been a call to arms for a lot of us to get back to the basics and say the world as we see it. And I don't have a magic 8-ball. I've stopped making predictions. Let me just tell the damn story, you know? And if anything, I find that refreshing that we're getting back to those basics. Yeah. But no more predictions. No more predictions.
Thanks for listening to the Student Slant. Be sure to check back next week for more student perspective.